What's going on, guys? My name's Nate Freeman for USA Muay Thai. I'm joined by Jeannie Nguyen, who was supposed to be fighting this weekend at Freedom 10, but that is no longer happening. But she is still the number 3 ranked 46 and a half kilo fighter for the U.S. Jeannie, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're super happy to have you. Like I mentioned, you were supposed to be facing Teddy Mandala um, at Freedom 10 this coming
Mhm.
Friday, but she broke her hand, and we tried to find an opponent. There was a big search, and um,
Mhm.
nothing sort of came about. But um, go ahead and talk to me about what all you were doing to prepare for that fight, how you saw Teddy as an opponent, and um, maybe where you go from here.
Sure. Obviously, it's super disappointing to not be able to be fighting this weekend, but it's the fight game. It happens. People get injured. People get sick. Opponents pull out. So, um, you know, we just keep moving forward from here. As far as prepping for this fight, we Teddy's been on the radar for a while. She's been, sitting at the top of the division in the youth category, and then now as an adult for quite a while. And I got to watch her fight, over in Denver at the last qualifiers. So we had a sense of her style. We knew she'd be fast, great hands, good kicks. And so we were really just preparing for the speed and the volume that she outputs. And we knew it would be a very tough physical fight. And I was really excited to do it, but I'm sure we'll get to run it back at some point.
Absolutely. So then, when and how did you hear about the fight being canceled? What was obviously you were disappointed, but what other sort of thoughts and emotions went into um, what other kind of thoughts and emotions were you feeling when the fight got canceled?
Sure. I think it was last Thursday or so that we got the news. And it was right after we had just had a training session with just my coach and I. And we found out that she was injured. And then, your immediate reaction is kind of just like a pause. You're like, what does this mean? Is there a backup? Do we have another plan? Can we find someone? We were scheduled to do media that day too. So it was like, what does all this mean for everything that's planned? We already have flights booked, we had hotels booked. But the immediate reaction was kind of just hold and pause and see. And we were talking with Rami, and he was doing an incredible job of trying to reach out to whoever he could or whoever he could reach to try and fill the spot. I think just with the holidays and how last minute it was, with weigh-ins being literally a week from that day, and not really having time to prep, I can understand the um, the difficulty in finding a replacement. So, um, a lot of it was just kind of like, all right, hold your breath, stand still for a little bit, keep prepping hard, keep doing what we need to make weight, to be ready for the fight, and then see if it happens.
And from what I've heard from you, it sounds like you've already got another fight lined up in January. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yep, super excited. We'll be back in Cali for once. I've been fighting kind of out of state for quite a bit this year. So excited to be back in Burbank on January 14th, back on Cali with Big Troy.
Absolutely. Do you have an opponent for that yet, or um,
So I believe my opponent is Justine Ronas. We'll see if that's what is the final opponent for the date. I think they're still finalizing things. We were scheduled to be matched up maybe a year or so ago, and that fight fell through. Again, these things happen, but we're running it back hopefully in January. So that's the current plan.
we'll be looking forward to seeing that? So you have been active this year. You competed in the World Games Qualifiers, and you placed third, like I mentioned, in the
Mhm.
division. But you've also been active between then and now. You've had a few fights between the qualifiers and what was supposed to be this fight. You faced Kennedy Mays in your last fight, and just sort of talk to me about what all you've been up to in terms of fights and how everything's gone both in the ring and out of the ring between the qualifiers and now.
Sure. So the first like 4 years that I was fighting, it was really difficult to be consistently active. We just had trouble finding matchups or injuries or whatever. And then after like going into this year, our plan was really just to be as active as possible and just keep chasing experience however we could get it. And the qualifiers was just a really big eye opener in terms of like, hey, we have a lot to work on. There's things to fix, and the way to do that is just to keep pushing the pace in terms of activity and keep testing our skill set and pushing it as much as we can, as often as we can. So we went straight from qualifiers to the USMTO in April. And that's when I first fought Kennedy. I lost that fight to a split decision. And then we rematched it again a month or so later for the promotional the Cali title. And then I won that rematch. And then from there, got an opportunity to fight out in Tulum with Rumble in the Jungle. And so that was a super cool experience, fought there. And then we did the USMTO once again in fall. I think that was about a month or so ago. So the plan was just to be fighting as often as we can. I think we've kept to a schedule of about fighting every other month. And it's been really helpful.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've just sort of been alternating, like 1 month is fight, 1 month is sort of preparing for fights, and it's just been sort of routine like that. So I'm sure that is helpful in terms of sort of having a rhythm and sort of a routine of, okay, I'm focusing on a fight, and then I have a fight, and then just sort of alternating back and forth.
Yeah, there's
Um,
the saying of like, you never have to get ready if you're already ready. And that's kind of been the case this year.
Absolutely. So then, with the year ending and with what it sounds like you have a fight coming up at the start of the new year, what is your goals for 2023? Obviously, you want to win that first fight, but then after that, what are some goals for that year?
I think the most immediate one and really relevant to this conversation is getting on the national team and being able to not only win the qualifiers bracket but compete internationally. World championships would be a huge opportunity. So I think that is the most immediate goal that we're working towards. But other than that, continuing to stay active and continue to improve and get better as an athlete overall.
What do you think along the lines of improving and getting better as an athlete? What are some things that you think that you're working on right now that are helping make you a better fighter or better athlete?
I mean, that's a great question. I've been doing a lot of work just in terms of performance. I have a strength and conditioning trainer, Jackie Gara, at Game Ready Performance, and then she's been doing amazing work to make me, faster, stronger, more reactive, explosive. And so, just generally, in terms of my physical capacity, we've been working on that. There's been a lot of mental training happening. I think that's a huge part of fighting that makes a really big difference in terms of whether or not you're ready in the ring. And then other than that, it's fine tuning every little itty bitty detail with my coach. Every kick getting a little bit better every single day, fine tuning and making sure all of your weapons come together so that you go into every fight with like a full arsenal instead of just having one or two strengths, especially considering the caliber of opponents that we'd be looking at for the next year.
Absolutely. So you mentioned on Instagram that you have not been an athlete for a long time. And
Mhm,
obviously there's a difference between like just being everyday sort of fit and being athlete, like fit
mhm,
like an athlete. And it sounds like that's something that you've still sort of been in the process of growing with and getting on the right diet and getting performance ready, like you mentioned. So
mhm.
talk to me, I guess, about what that process has been like since you've gotten into Muay Thai. But first, I want to hear maybe how you got into Muay Thai in the beginning.
Sure. So like you said, I'd never really done anything athletic before this. So I had never done sports in like high school or as a kid. Um, Generally very unathletic, which I think most people are surprised to hear about now. But at the same time, I was raised on a steady diet of like old school martial arts movies and, Dragon Ball and the whole repertoire of kids' martial arts shows. And so I'd always loved it, but my parents were very like, it's a dangerous thing to do. And martial arts isn't so much for girls. They kind of were of that mentality. So it wasn't something that I had the opportunity to do as a kid. And the second I graduated college and had like a steady income and had a little money to burn, I wanted to pick something up. And I told that to one of my coworkers at the time. And it turns out she lived 10 feet from a Muay Thai studio. Um, and we walked in one day after work and just kind of never left. And that was the Thai Boxing Institute. And I've been there with my coach Victor Acosta ever since.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Thai Boxing Institute, I spoke to Aaron Clayton over the course of the whole
Mhm.
World Games qualifier situation, and I know that you were there taking pictures and stuff. So our paths may have actually crossed um, without us sort of knowing it. But talk to me about her as a teammate, as I think she calls it you're her fight wife and part of the. Are you part of the Thick Calves Club as well?
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
am the president.
you're the president of the Thick Calves Club. Yeah, so go ahead and tell me a little bit about your side of that.
Sure. So, I mean, TBI is a really, when I first joined, it was a really, really small local gym. We didn't even have a ring inside the space. We had like two heavy bags and some mats. Um, and, there wasn't really a deep stable of fighters. There were maybe a couple of people who had taken a fight or two, but there wasn't really a steady team that was competing. And so when I joined and then, kind of fell in love with it and got a little bit addicted, and then all of a sudden I was competing super often. It was great, and my coach and I, we realized very quickly that I needed to find more partners that weren't like men who were 6 foot tall and 200 pounds. It just wasn't safe for me. And then when Aaron showed up, it was like, oh, great, like you've got a partner to work with. And it was really exciting to like have another woman on the team and to be working with, but also have someone who started competing and wanting to fight super often and have that same drive. And so we've kind of been teammates in that, and we're constantly pushing each other. And we've gotten to kind of see not only the whole like competition team grow, but we've gotten to see the gym expand in the course of the 7 years that we've been there. So it's been a really incredible process to grow together as fighters and as friends, but also as like coaches now and being a part of this whole gym community.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how like gyms, especially the smaller ones, I think people
Mhm.
not only like become great teammates, but they become good friends as well, and they
Mhm.
get a whole new sort of community that they may not have ever had if they had never stepped in the gym. I just think that's really interesting, and it sounds like from everybody that I know at TBI that it is extremely close knit, and everybody's just
Mhm.
super close, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good people who don't take themselves seriously, but take the sport seriously and train with care and intention. And it's we always say, small gym, big heart. There's a lot of love and really good Muay Thai happening in that space.
Absolutely. So I know that you have, I know three specific hobbies that you share on your Instagram. One is beanie making, and I talked before on the air that hopefully I'm getting a beanie from you pretty soon. Um, how did that sort of come about?
That was one of those pandemic hobbies, we were cooped in the house 2020, and I was like, well, I'm gonna pick up something new. And this tends to happen with things that I pick up where I'll start a new skill and then it'll kind of run away with it. And it goes a lot further than I intended it to. But I started knitting just to kill time. And next thing I knew, I had like an Etsy shop and I was mass producing beanies and apparel and other stuff. So that's kind of how that happened.
And then two, I mentioned that you were at the World Games doing this, but you're also a photographer, and I
Mhm.
think there's actually several sort of Muay Thai athletes around the country that are pretty well versed in photography. Talk to me about how you became passionate about that, and maybe some advice for people who are wanting to get into photography as well.
Sure. So I kind of fell into it accidentally. One of my friends was super into film photography and he had been carrying his camera around and I was like, "Oh, can I play around with that?" And he just kind of gave me his camera for a month. And I just kind of shot what I was doing at the time, which was living at the gym. So I was just shooting a ton of footage of just like my teammates training, my coaches, and kind of fell in love with that process. So I originally started shooting on film, which really forces you to be intentional with the shots that you take and learn the ins and outs of your camera. And I started taking it not just to the gym or to like my daily life, but to tournaments when we would travel, and started to shoot kind of the scenes of the locker rooms, the backstage, the things that happen outside of the ring that nobody really gets to see, but you're privy to as another fighter. Um, and it kind of just became a little documentary of that, and it started on Instagram, and it's just kind of kept the ball rolling from there. I've met a lot of really cool fighters and photographers through doing that, and so it kind of has just grown organically.
Along meeting some really cool fighters, forgot to ask this: who are some of your favorite Muay Thai fighters?
Oh man, that's such a hard question. There's so many good ones. Um, it's kind of weird to say now because she's a friend and I got to train with her, but Janet Todd is still one of my favorite fighters. And I'm bummed that she didn't get to fight last weekend either,
I know.
but she's incredible, I think, because when I first started training, she had just started breaking into the pro realm, and um, just like her background in working as a full-time engineer and the way she's able to balance her life, but also have an incredible style of Muay Thai and be so technical and incredibly hardworking was something that made it feel like it was possible for me. So I think she'll always hold a special place in my heart for that reason. But there's, I mean, so many incredible fighters to watch and to follow. It's hard to pick even like a top three.
Absolutely. That's more than fair. And yeah, shout out to Janet Todd. She's doing big things, and hopefully she, if she hasn't already, is fully recovered from COVID, and we can get that fight back on the books pretty soon. And then the third thing I saw was food, that you are somewhat of a foodie. So tell me about, maybe this is, I'm sure, going to be a hard question, but like maybe some of your, either your favorite meals or favorite restaurants that you've been to. You've been to Thailand, and obviously Thailand
Mhm.
has just some outstanding food, and California, for the most part, is a pretty good food scene as well. So, just sort of share with me some of the favorite things that you've had, or at least the things that you've been able
Mhm.
to document having.
Oh man, a huge foodie. I think that was the hardest adjustment when I started to compete more regularly, was just like having to be so on top of my diet. But I love a good bowl of ramen any
Mm,
day. Amazing. And I didn't used to be a huge sweets person, but now I'm like addicted to donuts of any form and churros. So the first thing I had right after I fought in Mexico, it was like right next to a giant churro stand, and we got like 3 churros each.
mm.
But really, just any sort of carb or deep fried something in any form is my cup of tea.
Well, here in the South, everything's deep fried. I'm here in Birmingham, um, Alabama, so everything down here is basically deep fried. So you would love it down here, and I'm sure you did when you did come down here.
Yeah, we visited for World Games when Aaron was down there, and we ate well.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jeannie, thank you so much for your time today. I want to give you the floor before we go to thank any sponsors, coaches, anything like that. How can people follow you on social media as well?
Absolutely. If you want to follow, I am Jeannie on Instagram, and that's probably the easiest way to reach me. My gym is the Thai Boxing Institute. The coach is Coach Victor Acosta, and he's amazing, and I love him. And Coach, if you're watching this, thank you for everything. And then huge shout out to our sponsors. We've had quite a few come up in the past year. Frequence, Touch Brilliance, Massage Therapy, Quad Dental, Out of Step, Kintsugi Bites, Shanti MD. A big shout out to Will at Golden Era Apparel for not just sponsoring, but for, really doing his best to support our team. And then when this fight fell through, trying to throw out bonuses to get me an opponent. So they've been super supportive. Like you said, we have a really great community at TBI and a great community supporting us. And I'm so thankful for everyone for uh, getting us here and helping us along our way.
Absolutely. This has been Jeannie Nguyen. She's fighting in January now. Jeannie, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck in your fight, and best of luck as you go into the World Games, or into the national qualifiers here in a few months.
Yeah, thanks for everything, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.